Welcome everybody to the Chess Lab, welcome to episode 9, welcome to episode 8 of How to Reassess Your Chess. I thought we were already on episode 9, but we are on episode 8, okay? So we were going through the Bishops chapter, and we are doing the Bishops puzzles. So here we are. Level 2100 on up. Interesting. So let's evaluate the position. 221, 221, knight, bishop, rooks. So material is equal. I'm gonna use my points. Pawn structure. We don't have a symmetrical pawn structure. Black has a passed pawn on the f-file. We have two passed pawns on D and E. They have a 3 against 1 on the king side. We have a 2 against 0 in the center. So our central pawns are very, very strong. Weaknesses. Well, our h3 pawn is weak. Our d4 pawn is weak. What about them? Their h7 pawn is weak, perhaps. Space. They have more space on the king side. We have more space on the center, in the center. Pawn breaks. We have the push e6, which looks tremendously interesting. Of course, I'm noticing the b2 bishop on the king. You want to try to open it up. Again, when we think about bishops, we should start to think, based on what we saw yesterday and the other days, we should start to think about opening diagonals for those bishops. Open files, weak squares. There is the open C file, and then there are many semi-open files. D, E, F, G are all semi-open. Weak squares. There is F6, which is weak. There is D6, which is weak. We have E4, which is weak for us. There is H5 that is weak, H6 that is weak. And those squares are weak. F4 is weak. H4 is weak. Okay. G3, E3 in general, those squares are a little bit... But also G7, right? Okay. Minor pieces. Their knight, let's say. Their knight is not looking too good. Is not threatening to take... well, they can take if we recapture with a pawn, because we will lose the queen, even though it's interesting what happened after this, but I guess they can do it. But they cannot do it because we can just take with the rook, for example, right? Or with the knight, but probably with the rook. Now, so their knight's not looking too good. They can try to play g4. Oh, pawn breaks. I only looked at my pawn breaks. They have g4, which looks quite strong, and then their knight all of a sudden becomes alive, reaching the e4 square we mentioned previously. So noticing the weak squares and noticing the pawn breaks already managed to help us to identify this maneuver here. So the position that seemed a little bit secret, now it's unveiling in front of our own eyes. That sounded more dramatic than it needed to be, but it was also very cool. Okay, let's go again. Minor pieces. We said this knight's not looking too good. This bishop. So this is not an active bishop, but is a useful bishop. Is defending the important f5 pawn, otherwise it would be quite of a trouble. And this bishop is ready to play bishop to e6, which is crucial in the blockade of this e5 pawn, because if we compare these two pieces, this bishop on b2 is very passive at the time being, right? But again, we want to open it up to become an absolute monster, but it's not easy. Okay, so in this position here, Heavy pieces, the queen and the rooks. Well, these two rooks, in my opinion, are worse than these two rooks. The only rook that is perhaps a little bit active for black is the g8 rook, because it's supporting the pawn break g4. But this rook on a8 is terrible, whereas our rook on e1, for example, if we compare these two pairs, right? Our rook on e1 is much better. He's just trying to support this push. He's an absolute monster of a piece. Now, what else? What else, huh? Well, Armageddon thinking, checks, threats, captures, threat of mate, stuff like this. I mean, I don't know about threat of mate, but they can definitely play g4, which looks quite annoying. It looks quite annoying. Okay. Now, we have, of course, this push. And the idea is that after bishop takes, rook takes, queen takes, we have d5 and is over. That's our idea, even though they have rook g7 and we stand a little bit tricky here. But moving on. If nothing urgent, select candidate moves based on evaluation, calculate. Okay, so what does black want to do? Black wants to block our pawn, which indeed blocks this diagonal, which also attacks b3. So bishop d6, if we get this move to our opponent, is going to be very strong for them. And then they want to just advance with g4, perhaps bringing the rook into the game first with rook to f1, perhaps even improving this knight, right? Or perhaps g4 immediately. So that's kind of the idea. So what can we do? We can play this move e6. e6 has the idea to fork these two guys, so that's a fork. And again, if they take with the bishop, I'm ready to take with the rook. If they take with the queen, if they don't tear down a piece, we check, and it's pretty good. If they play knight here, we can just take because the knight's spinned. So that would be awesome. We can also just take with the bishop and it's good. So yeah, I like this, right? So after e6, the first forced line, bishop takes e6, rook takes e6, queen takes e6, d5 check, looks fantastic for white. However, after e6, we should consider other moves. We should consider, for example, checks. I see already queen to d6 check. Playing anything rather than moving the king, I think is a big problem. I think... because we are pinning, for example, e6, queen to d6 check, rook to e5, knight takes e5, no, actually, sorry. After e6, queen to d6, rook to e5, there is bishop takes e6. But then we have d5 anyways. This is a little bit trickier than I thought. So, okay, e6, queen to e6, but what about king g1? Then there is queen g3. Okay, what about king to h1? What about king to g2? What about king to g2? And we are threatening d5. And we are threatening the fork. So after e6, they may play g4, for example. But after e takes f7, we are hitting a rook. So they cannot just play g takes f3, because we will take f takes g8 check, rook takes g8, queen takes f3. And it feels to me we are doing quite fantastically. So I'm gonna play e6. Okay. So here there is this move bishop b5, which of course I should have immediately considered, but I didn't. I didn't consider this move at all. which is very bad by me. Now I could play queen takes b5, queen takes b5, d5 check anyways. Only move rook g7, only move. Absolute and utter only move. Now what though? Ooh, knight d4 attacks the queen. Queen takes d5. That's not good. No, that's not good. Queen takes d5. Knight takes f5, but queen d2 check. So after queen takes b5, queen takes b5, d5 check, rook g7. Let's evaluate the position then. Something, this is next level. So we have two connected pass pawn in the center. They are close to promoting, I guess. They have a ping rook. They have an attacked knight. So we can play e takes f7, for example. Oh, yeah. We have to be forcing. But also, is it forcing queen takes, d5 check, rook g7, the pawn's hanging. What about bishop takes g7, king takes g7, e takes f7? King takes f7, let's say, I don't know. Knight takes g5, feels not too bad. So queen takes b5, d5, rook g7. Now what do we do? E takes f7, queen takes d5. What do we do here? No, queen takes d5 loses rook e8. So the d5 pawn is untouchable. So after queen takes b5, d5, rook g7, e takes f7, they cannot take on d5. What about queen takes b3? Not the same. So what can they do in that position? Queen takes, pawn push, rook g7, e takes f7. They can play rook f8. But then I can play knight takes g5 perhaps. And on queen takes d5, what do we do? Oh, I got it. Bishop takes g7, king takes g7, knight e6, king takes f7, knight takes f8, king takes f8. Yeah, it's not good. I'm gonna do it because if anything, it's a draw. So I'm just gonna take it. Yeah, and I'm just gonna. Do I take the knight first? Wow. Do I take the knight first? What's the difference? If I take the knight first... No, there is queen takes. No, but then I just take. They take. Yeah, I'm just gonna do that. Who cares? Yeah, so the puzzle continues. This is brutal. The puzzle continues. This is absolutely and utterly brutal. I can also play e7. But that's crazy. Again, I just want to take. The idea is that I'm threatening rook e8 in some lines. Okay, now they capture here. So now they can move. They can move now. Now I can play knight d4. A reason for that is if they take this pawn, I have check. And if they take, I promote. And if they go here, I still promote. Now rook e8 immediately takes. I don't quite see it. But knight here looks strong. Now what can the queen do in this position? The queen cannot check me. The queen may go back, let's say here, to attack this pawn. She has to stay on the diagonal, otherwise rook e8. But then I have knight e6. They can take, but I take with a knight or something. Yeah, I take with a knight or something. Then this hangs, there are discoveries and stuff. So I liked it a lot. I'm gonna try it. It's wrong, okay. Yeah, knight h4 with the silly moves. Okay. I call it a silly move because like knight to d4 is so much more sensical. But this counterintuitive, retaining the pin along the a1, h8 diagonal, continuation is the way to go. Oh, because if I play knight d4, they can play rook takes f7. No, if I play knight d4, I'm hitting their queen. What? That's crazy. What? How is not winning knight d4? That's crazy. I mean, I understand the idea. The idea is to then go like rook g1 if they take and they're lost, but still. Okay, so I mean, I solved the puzzle because what matters is the first move to technically solve the puzzle, but like, and the idea was to open up the bishop, which is the point. But I want to check with the engine if knight to d4 was also winning, unless there is a variation that says it's not. So e6. The e-pawn sacrifices itself in an effort to clear the central dark squares and activate its bishop. Bishop to b5, that's crazy. Bishop takes e6, loses instantly. I didn't even consider that. Queen takes, this is great. Sacrificing the queen and removing the blockader on d5. This allows the final dark square blockage to be removed. White doesn't have to play in this manner, but who could resist giving up the queen? Queen takes, d5, rook g7, e takes f7, h6. If you play rook f8, knight takes is devastating, okay. And after h6, knight h4. This counterintuitive is the way to go. See the next position, see in chapter. Okay, let's go on this game. A very famous game, Capablanca Corso. So perhaps I even already saw it in the past, but I didn't remember it for sure. A very famous game. This position is quite interesting. The main features are the opposite color bishops. White's chew. I didn't even notice the opposite color bishops, which is one of the major imbalances. White's chew past center pawns and black's kingside pawn majority. Okay, I noticed the other things. At the moment, white's center pawns are frozen in place. Black's kingside majority is chugging along. But the advances have left various weaknesses in their wake. Most pronounced, at least to my eye, is the sad situation of white's bishop. The poor thing has been relegated to tall pawn status. As we know, if you have such a bishop, you need to either get it outside the pawn chain, thus making it active, or get the blockchain pawn out, the blocking pawns out of its way. These goals can be actualized by positional or tactical means. On the other hand, black's bishop looks very nice. If he's able to create a permanent blockade on both e6 and d5, and if you guys remember Zinzi Hasvili's videos, he tried to do the same in the Scotch, just from the white side. Anyways, this is crazy. Do you guys remember that? If you remember that, you're good. So, this implies I'm good, but that, I mean, I feel cool to remember that. Anyways, on the other hand, black's bishop looks very nice. If he's able to create a permanent blockage on both e6 and d5, for example, his knight on e6, queen on d7, and bishop on d5, he'll enjoy a significant advantage. So which bishop will be the hero? Since it's white to move, it's his job to insist that his bishop rules the day. Because the black king is sitting on the same diagonal as white's bishop, it's clear that transformation from tall pawn to monster could occur if those pawns were to suddenly vanish. Capablanca, then only 12 years old. What? Capablanca, then only 12 years old, probably understood all this information in an instant. That's crazy. Then he unlocked one of his most memorable combinations. Explaining the rating spread. If you realize that the bishop on b2 was a serious problem, and if you notice the potential along the a1 h8 diagonal, and if you then did everything you could to rectify it, we can say you did very well. The rest of the solution is all about advanced tactics, but tactics that serve to make White's strategic dream come true. e6. Double exclam. The e-pawn sacrifices itself into an effort to clear the central dark squares and activate its bishop. Another, far simpler win was queen to c4. That's crazy. Bishop to e6, queen takes d5, bishop takes d5, e6. When black's position falls apart, due of course to the opening of the a1 h8 diagonal. For example, knight to h6, rook e5 attacks the bishop, rook a to d8 to defend it, but now e7, and it's all over. Because if you move the rook here, you lose the bishop, and if you keep the defense of the bishop, there's going to be a promotion. So e6, bishop to b5, we already established the bishop takes e6 is losing because of rook takes, and now queen takes b5, sacrificing the queen and removing the blockader on d5. This allows the final dark square blockade to be removed. White doesn't have to play in this manner, but who could resist giving up the queen? Queen d2 does the trick, knight d8, rook to e5, and the diagonal will be open. The point of all these methods, e6 or queen c4, queen takes b5 or queen d2, two positional methods and two tactical ones, is the same, to bust up black's blockade of the d4 pawn and rip open the a1 h8 diagonal for the b2 bishop. So queen takes b5, queen takes b5, d5, rook g7, e takes, and now h6 on rook f8, knight takes g5 and is gg, and now knight to d4. I played what Capablanca played, and you said it's a mistake? At least give me the alternative, dude, come on. Unless it's a mistake. A very human move, it feels natural, gains time by hitting the queen, and also seems, and is, extremely strong. Yet, it's not the most accurate. Yeah, but give it as an alternative. Nobody says nothing? Really? Come on, man. Instead, the counterintuitive knight h4, retaining the pin along the a1 h8 diagonal, is the way to go. King h7, for example, g takes h4, there is rook g1, yes, we established that. So king h7, bishop takes g7 now, threatening to promote, but g takes h4 anyways, promotion, and now you are left with a lot of pieces. Now you go here, threatening some, I don't know, rook to e7, bishop g7 things or something. Check, king here, queen d3, threatening queen f3 or something. Rook g2 to prevent that, and also setting up rook g1 perhaps, I don't know. Queen h3, king to g1, and white's two rooks and bishop, not to mention the attack against black king, easily overpowers black's lonely queen. Okay, which is logical, but knight d4, which is my move and the move of Capablanca, so that's nice. Queen takes f1. There are the tricks. Queen d7, Capablanca's analysis goes as follows. Knight takes f5. Notice how also Capablanca calculates like crazy. Queen takes, bishop takes, king h7, rook e7, that's crazy. Queen takes d5, bishop to e5, king to g6, rook g7, king h5, knight g3, king h4, rook to f4, g takes f4, rook g4. Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. So queen takes f1, rook takes f1, rook takes f7, rook takes f5, rook takes f5, knight takes f5, king h7, knight e7, killing the king, which has no moves, and also depriving black's rook's access to the c file. So rook to f8, king to g2, h5, d6, pushing the passed pawn, g4, h takes, bishop to e5. I guess if you play d7, rook d8 and is awkward, but I'm not sure. So bishop e5, king h6, d7, and now you do that. Why? Rook d8, knight g8. Rook takes g8. If, and I'm curious, king g6, knight f6, oh, you defend the pawn, King f7, bishop here, yeah. Okay, so as soon as they move their king here, you have the maneuver knight g8, knight f6 to defend the pawn in this instance. So they took, but now bishop f6, white's now a piece up, the rest was easy. Takes, b5, king f2, king f5, king to e3, king to e5, king to d3. Every time g3 happens, bishop c7 picks it up, so king d5. Now if you play g3, there is still bishop c7, and after g2, bishop h2, or bishop h4, bishop f2, I guess. a5, b4. If take, I guess that if you take, you have to take with a pawn. Because if you take with a king, you have the wrong bishop color. So king e4, bishop b6, which threatens not much, because bishop takes, there is the promotion. King d5, king d3, king c6, bishop g1, king here, bishop h2, just wasting a tempo, king c6. Now you improve the position of the king, a4, but now you're just gonna shoulder them, and that's it. King c6 though would have been a trick because of queen g1. That's crazy, and this is stalemate. So king c5, and he resigned. Okay, very nice. So this was also okay. I disagree with the mistake. I think it would be more fair to give it as alternative. Okay, 2 quizzes to go. Okay, level 1400, 1800. Wow, what's going on here? 8 pawns. So materials equal. Symmetrical, non-symmetrical. Well, they have a double G pawn and no F pawn, whereas our pawn structure is intact, so there is an asymmetry there. Weaknesses: their G6 pawn is weak, F6, H6 are weak, G5 is weak, C6, E6 is weak, and all these squares are weak. D4 is weak for us, that's pretty much it. B3 is also weak. Okay. Pawn breaks. We have B4. We have B4. What do we have? We have perhaps F4. We have perhaps H4. Perhaps I don't know. Okay. So. More space. Did we talk about space here? We have more space in the center, and on the queen side, they have more space on the king side. Space. It feels like where you have more space, you should attack. So, space. There is space. I think space is super important, actually, guys, because it feels like where you have space and there are the pawn breaks, that's where the play is usually revolved around. Like in the previous example, we had more space in the center, and that's where the play was. So space feels like space is really, really key. And if you think about Alpha Zero and all these things, they take like some very big space advantage on the side, and then they play there. I mean, the game ends there. They may maneuver around to get there, but that's the point. So that's very interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay, so in this position here, let's see what we can establish from this. Okay, what can we establish? So, minor pieces, major imbalances, bishop pair, knight versus bishop, opposite color bishop. We have none of that. Relative imbalances. Okay, so let's compare. The knight on c3 feels better than the knight on a6, that even if it goes back to c7 doesn't really have a future. Probably best is knight from a6 to c7 to e8 to f6, but even then it's not so clear. Perhaps you even have to go to h7, play g4 and then knight g5, but then it's redundant with the other knight. So the knight on a6 is pretty shit. Whereas the knight on c3 is decent. It's not awesome, but it's decent. Look at least at b5 and a4, which is interesting. It can jump there at least. He has some more mobility, but the center is locked. The knight on d2 is not great. It's not great. It's just not great. The bishop on d3 is a bad bishop. Is it useful though? It's not even that useful. It's like a pawn. It's a big pawn. So I don't like this bishop. I don't like this bishop. Our queen is decent. It's applying pressure over to g5. And if we compare it to their queen, it's fine. It's fine. It's really fine. Their bishop on d7 is their good bishop. And he's looking at both diagonals. Is not perhaps super useful because it can go nowhere, but he's looking at b5, so you can imagine knight c7, a6, b5, which the bishop supports. So yeah, I'm not hating on that bishop much. Okay, this feels like this is kind of a Benoni structure. I'm not saying this came from a Benoni. Now the other knight on f7 looks atrocious. It just looks atrocious. I think a key pawn break for black is g4, but then they have to be careful about our f4 as a response, of course, which would help us perhaps open things up. But okay, so their knight has some potential, but right now is bad. Our rooks are, it feels like, decently positioned. There is the possibility of playing b4, which is a pawn break where we have more space, which we may do. And the other rook on f1 is on the semi-open file. Is semi-open in black's favor, but still is a semi-open file. And so our two rooks are decent. The rook on a8 is still in the starting square. The rook on f8 is decent. So I would say our rooks are slightly better because of our rook on b1 feels better than the rook on a8. Our queen will say slightly better. Our knight on c3 is perhaps slightly better, but again, knight c7 with the idea of b5 can become useful. Our knight on d2 is better. So, okay, the crucial point of our position is really the bishop. If you think about it, the bishop is quite bad. So I thought, and this is the first maneuver that came to my mind, to play bishop c2, bishop a4, right? To trade off this bishop. And if they decline the trade, well, if they decline the trade here, I can still do it. But if they decline the trade, let's say to c8, first of all, they're not getting b5 in, but also then I can play bishop c6, for example, instituting some sort of a strong piece there. Knight b5 even, and if they play a6, they can play a6, but then more squares become weak. I can play b4, trying to open things up, can become quite troublesome. But before going for the ideas, rooks and queens we talked about. King's safety, I would say, is pretty much safe for both of us. They have compromised themselves, but also they may launch an attack, so I would say it's fair. At the moment, I don't think that neither of these kings are in danger. Of course, if they start to move away the knight, the queen, pushing the pawn and allow us this, okay, but this is not happening, so I would say good safety of king for both, as time being, of course. Now, checks, there are no checks, captures, I mean, no. Threat of mate, no. Attacks. I don't even see attacks. Perhaps they want to play g4. Perhaps they want to play g4, yeah. Perhaps they want to play g4, but g4 there is f4, and we're starting to open and all of a sudden after f4 they have to be careful. They have to be careful because if they take, we take, right? And we may always sacrifice to open things up, and all of a sudden these weaknesses are actually making some sense. But, and if they take with the knight, again, all of a sudden you take here, you enter here, right? What we talked about that is impossible, may become possible, knights behind it. Is a second, is a second. It doesn't take much to create a powerful attack. So, okay, but I'm not too concerned. So, right now, black is not immediately threatening anything, so we can go for this maneuver. I'm going to go for this maneuver. Now, after bishop c2, they're probably going to try to stop us. If they play knight c7, I think we can do it because b5 just doesn't work. I can even take with the pawn, and then all of a sudden, beautiful c4 square for my knight, hinting all the weaknesses. But after bishop to c2, I think they're going to play queen e8. I think they're just going to play queen e8. No? I think that makes a lot of sense. How am I going to proceed after that? What does queen to e8 changes? Well, then all of a sudden this knight is perhaps, sorry, the queen is no longer looking at this pawn. But how does this change things? f6 becomes forkable. It's tricky, it's tricky. I may consider h4, and the idea is that if they take, because okay, after I play bishop here, the queen moving here relinquishes the defense of this. So we can play h4, threatening to win the pawn. If they push or they take, even sacrificing a pawn, we can go f4. And the idea will be that eventually, if they take, let's say if they don't take, well, are we threatening to take? No, if they don't take, we just push. And we attack. I don't know. I'm going to play bishop c2. If it's wrong, it's wrong. It's correct. They play queen e7. They don't play queen e8, very interestingly. Now I think I really want to do this. Unless I want to play b4 for some reasons, but... Okay, they go knight back. Again, the puzzle is technically solved. I mean, this is kind of solved, no? I would say. Of course, it keeps going, but... so all of a sudden, if I got this position as a first timer, right? I see this position for the first time, and I try to evaluate it. I would say that our knight on a4 is the worst piece. Well, the knight on e2 sucks, so I don't know. Yeah, I shouldn't be so fast in my judgment, but I would notice the b4 square. I would play something like knight c3 perhaps. Knight c3, you know? Yeah. Knight c3, knight c7, b4. I don't know though, but the knight on d2 at least. Perhaps b4. Is b4 a move? b4, no, I don't know. Is there a way to get a knight to c6? Not that I can see. To e6, not that I can see. I can play b4, try to activate this rook. If they take, I have c5 as an idea. b5 doesn't work, so I think. But what's the idea behind knight c7? Do they want to go here? They're disconnecting the rooks. That's a little bit weird. I can try to play h4, sacrificing this for entering, but I'm going to play b4. Ooh, finally, this is perhaps the first puzzle that I solved in full. All the moves. So let's click on this. Wow, finally. Bishop c2, preparing to exchange the lousy bishop for black's active one via bishop a4, queen e7. I would have given serious consideration to queen e8, exactly, preventing the immediate exchange of bishops, exactly. Bishop a4, bishop takes, knight d8, b4, and white's queenside play give him a marked advantage. That's crazy. That's crazy. So this was played between Helvest Jan and Novik Maxim. This position offers a simple but effective illustration of a timed, honored rule. Trade your bad pieces for your opponent's good ones. Yeah. One glance should convince you that white's bishop is a tall pawn, while black's is actively patrolling two diagonals, which I've noticed. Is there any way for white to exchange these two pieces? So the diagonals are e8, a4, and c8, h3, okay? Explain the rating spread. I hope you noticed the plight of your bishop, and having done that, did your best to make its life easier. Since a detailed study of the section on bishops would have made you aware of the ways to deal with tall pawn, I have complete faith that you found a solution. If not, don't despair, just give that section another read. Okay, thankfully we don't have to do that. We're gonna give it another read one day, you know. I may do it off camera, I'm probably gonna do it off camera. Okay, last puzzle if I'm not crazy, yeah. Aroni against Vidler. Okay, so let's look at this position. Level 2100 on up. So that's tough puzzle. I may have an idea here already. That's insane though. Okay, so I may have already seen this puzzle and I may know the solution. Maybe, not sure. Maybe I'm crazy. I could be crazy. I'm probably crazy. I'm probably crazy. Don't think about it. It's fine. So. 2-4, yeah, 2-4. So materials equal, but symmetrical, non-symmetrical. I think I know where this opening come from. Actually, I think this is a semi-tarash. I think this is a semi-tarash. Maybe, but I think it's a semi-tarash. Yes. So, anyways, sorry. They have a 2 against 1 on the queen side, whereas we have a 2 against 1 in the center. So we have central space, We have more space in the center, and it's crazy because the first move that I thought of, well, the second move that I thought of, which is the move that I want to play and that I have in my mind, is in the center. That's crazy. Like, where you have more space, you gotta play. That's crazy. That's a cheat code. Like, that's crazy. And it may not always work, but again, it is your workload. Look at any position you play. You have more space somewhere. Check some moves there, because there is a very high chance that's where the best move is. It is not 100%, I guess, but that's crazy. Anyways, sorry for that. So pawn breaks, h4, h5 for us, a4, a5, I don't know, e4, d5, trying to create the passed pawn. Yeah, I would exclude a4, a5, as I said, but a4, a5, a takes b6 to create a weakness, perhaps, h4, h5 to kind of make them concern, and e4, d5, I don't know. What do they have, though? What do they have? Well, they have a5, b5, a4, b4, b3 to create a passed pawn. Of course, that's impossible right now to do, but you know what I mean. So there's that. Open files, weak squares. There is the open C file, the semi-open B file, the semi-open D file. Weak squares. So there is a weak square on C6, D6, F6, H6 for them, and A6. We have weak squares on C3, A3, C4, B4, I guess. You know, A4, every square that cannot be controlled by a pawn, even theoretically speaking. Okay. Minor pieces, that's where it gets interesting. We don't have opposite color bishops, we don't have bishop pair, we have none of that. Let's compare the pieces. So, it feels like they're pretty much same in a way. Like our bishop on d3 looks very good and very important because again, d3 is a weakness, technically speaking, structurally speaking, and c4 is a weakness, right? And a4 is a weakness. So if we didn't, but let's talk about d3, e3, and c4. If we didn't have that bishop, we will be in trouble because bishop c4, for example, followed by knight a5 to exploit c4 will be a problem, will be a big problem. So our bishop is very important. It's not crazily strong because on the king side, for example, is staring at concrete, as Raven will say. And their bishop, on the other hand, what is their bishop doing? Well, their bishop is just staring down the diagonal. It's not terrible. I think my move is wrong because of what I just noticed. And so the very first move that I saw is perhaps the correct move, but I'm not sure. So, anyways, what else? Yeah? What else? Sorry guys, I'm tired. Look at that arm. Holy whoa, what? That's crazy. That's some crazy muscles right there. I'm going to the gym, guys, you know. I'm going to the gym. I've been going to the gym with a friend of mine who's also a colleague of mine, which is also basically my coach. He's my personal trainer. Thank you very much, bro. Anyways, and it's nice to go to the gym. Anyways, back to what I'm saying here. And that's also why I'm tired like that, because going to the gym and actually train properly, like you reach failure in a lot of exercises and eventually you don't reach failure with the muscle because your muscle brain connection, I'm speaking English, hopefully you're understanding, breaks first. Like you can't even lift your arms, let's say, whatever exercise you're doing, because you just can't do it. You're like brain farting, you know. So if you train like that, which is very difficult, very tough, but also very rewarding, you're going to be tremendously tired. Like, that's crazy difficult. And on top of that, 8 hours of work, and on top of that, waking up at 4 a.m., and on top of that, going to sleep not perhaps at 8 p.m. as I should do, you're really tired, believe me, you're really, really tired. Good thing I have the age I have so I can do it, no problems, but it's still difficult even at my age. It's difficult at any age. So anyways, but it's a lot of fun, so let's go. Here's the thing. Back to this position, what I was saying again, compare these pieces. Their bishop is good, but it's not like insane. Our bishop is good, but it's not insane. Same thing for the knight, I will say. Our knight is good because it has potential. Can go to g5, can go to g5 to hit those guys. And if it gets attacked, it creates weaknesses and can go to e4 to target those weaknesses, gets hit, creates more weaknesses. Like, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I don't plan to play knight g5 for the record, but you know, is something to notice. Now, what else? Then I can jump to e5, obviously. Right now I'm not sure because takes, bishop takes I'm not a big fan of, even though you're probably getting away with it. But in general, even though, let's say this pawn is protected or it doesn't exist or whatever, like knight here, maybe, but I don't see it. I don't see it. But e5 is a square I like. I would like to go there with the knight. But they have their knight that controls it, right? So in a crazy turn of event, there is a chance, could be crazy, but there is a chance that the best thing to do is to trade our light square bishop for their knight to win control of the e5 square. But the more I look at it, the more I'm like, they can play f6 and kick us out. Like, my idea was to play bishop b5. But okay, let's look at threats. Are there any threats? Checks, captures, attacks. There's this, but it does nothing. So no, there are no threats, there's no captures, there's no attacks, there's none of that. Okay? Okay, not that I can see at least. Okay. But what can we do? What can we do? There are certain things we can do. Again, my first instinct was to play bishop b5. Bishop b5. Why? Well, if they play a6, we can take. They take, we take, they take, we take here. They can check us, for example, but we just lied. Right? And it feels decent, like here, that traps our rook. Oh, but if they go here, we have check, never mind. So yeah, this feels good. A6 feels like he just loses a pawn, terribly. What else, though? What else? Move the knight. Let's say they move the knight to a5. Well, all of a sudden, we can go knight to e5. And our pieces are so active. Bishop takes, f3, bishop here. I mean, bishop here, I have knight check, I have bishop here, I have king here, and if they try to escape, there is this, and they lose the bishop. So yeah, bishop here is it feels decent. Knight here, again, we can always just do this. And after bishop here, pawn here, their pieces are all dead. So bishop b5. Now, I wanted to play bishop e4 also because it really forces this bishop out, perhaps. But that's not our goal. But also there's bishop a6, which is awkward. Right? So I think bishop b5 is just very good. Knight here. We have rook takes, just wins a piece. So I think I'm going to go with bishop b5. And if it's wrong, it's wrong. And it's wrong. It's wrong. g4. Yeah, I would have never played g4 in a trillion years. Ever. g4. Excellent. White intends g4, g5, and there's no convenient way to stop it. That's crazy. I would have never played g4 in a trillion years. But this is where you break the ceiling. Like, I like to imagine, this is a metaphor of course, but there is a ceiling above your head, and this is something, the ceiling is not something that you find difficult. the ceiling is really something that is out of your league completely. Like g4 is a move that is out of my league. I considered g3 and in general moving the g-pawn to prevent some lines where we lose it. But the idea g4, g5, you know, moving the pawn to move the pawn, not just to defend it, that's out of my league. Completely insane out of my league in this context here. If you tell me that this is an endgame exercise and you have to look for pawn moves, then of course one of my candidates perhaps is g4, and I say perhaps. But no, in this context here, no shot I would have ever played g4. Ever, ever, ever. So the ceiling is not something you struggle with. I don't struggle with g4. It's not even in my radar, you know? It's like, struggling is like, do I play bishop b5? What happened if a6? You know, that's struggling. g4 is just crazy. So your ceiling is something that is completely out of your mind, but not like crazy, like outside of your mind, you know, completely outside of your perception. And so when you face it and when you meet it, that's extremely good because it really revolutionizes, it improves the way you think for the better, hopefully, right? And it just does. So yeah, g4 is just crazy. I'm just gonna enjoy writing the explanation afterwards. So g4, and that's it. That's it. That's just it. That's crazy. g4 is insane. So here, g4, excellent. White intends g4, g5, and there's no convenient way to stop it. Now, I said this is a semi-Tarrasch, but let's see if it's true or not. Maybe I'm completely off, but perhaps. No, I'm completely off. I don't even know what this is. Completely off. Completely off. Completely off. Completely off. Completely. Bishop b7, rook h to c1, rook h to c8. The main imbalance in this position is the battle between white's central pawn majority and black's queenside pawn majority. Okay, this is identified. Well, I identified the two majorities. I didn't say those were the major imbalances. Many amateurs are programmed to quake in their boots when they realize their opponent has a queenside majority. Isn't that a big advantage? They ask. It can be, but center pawns tend to be more valuable in the middle game and in positions where... So I have to reread this. It can be that the queenside majority is a big advantage. Okay, so it can be that a queenside majority is a big advantage. But center pawns tend to be more valuable in the middle game and in positions where quite a few pieces still remains on the board. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, this is true. And I thought about it, but then I forgot it. Interesting. And as we can readily see, white's center pawns give him a spatial plus. Yeah, it's nothing huge, but it's something. However, there's another battle going on here too. The battle of the bishops. White has noticed that black's center and kingside pawns are all on light squares. So, white has noticed that black's center and kingside pawns are all on light squares, yes. So as you can see, these are all on light squares. Well, I can't highlight, okay. If they were permanent, such a state of affairs would bode well for white's bishops, since the enemy pawns would be potential targets. Thus, white plays to fix the enemy pawns on light squares. g4, excellent. White intends g4, g5, and there is no convenient way to stop it. This is crazy. So this is some meta strategy against bishops, you know, or in favor of bishops. It's like it gives one less target to this bishop. Paradoxically, moving the g-pawn makes this bishop slightly less strong because of that. But that's not even mentioned, so that's not really important. What matters is that fixing those guys on light squares. That's crazy. I wanted to occupy this square with a piece. Okay. So h6. Let's see the other choices. So there was f5. f5, g takes. If you play e takes, then the d-pawn is a passed pawn. So g takes. And that will compensate for white ruined structure a little bit. Perhaps more than a little bit. Definitely more than a little bit. G takes f5. Now rook g1, switching gears. Threatening rook g7, which win the bishop. You can also play d5 to try to dismantle black's pawn structure, and after e takes d5, rook g1 now. But if you play bishop here, then there is bishop a6. Look at that. Look at that. So instead of that, rook g1, and after rook to g8, knight to h4, targeting that guy, knight e5, attacking the bishop, knight check, king f6, threatening knight takes d3, and then king takes f5. So knight to d4, blockading the passed pawn, knight takes d3, king takes d3, with a very nice endgame for white. That's crazy, bro. That's crazy. Okay, but let's go back. F takes, g takes, rook g1, now rook g8, rook to g3, rook takes g3, h takes g3, with a small but pleasant structural edge. 3-pawn island to chew, and weakness on h7, e6, and all on e5. True, 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 very true. What else? There was also f6 after the very first move g4, right? F6, but now g5, f5, and now e5 is all of a sudden actually weak. So the ideas like bishop b5, bishop takes are no longer that crazy. h4, when white has achieved his aim of fixing black's central and kingside pawns on light squares. Interesting. But after g4, they play h6, right? And now h4, insisting. And here knight to a5 was played. The alternative was rook c7, trying to double up the rooks, but now g5, rook a to c8, threatening knight takes d4 check, which will lose a knight but win a rook, so they will win an exchange. Alternative is h takes g5, h takes g5, rook a to c8, rook h1 correctly announces that the h file is far more important than the c file. So this is there is a reason why this is 2100 plus, right? You have to be good at many things. Explaining the rating spread, this is all about finding subtle ways to create things that don't exist yet. Very advanced, which explain the rating spread. Yeah, this is crazy advanced. This is crazy advanced for me as well. In fact, it's 2100 plus. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. But this is great. This is great. Like, this is so instructive. Because again, it's that ceiling, right? Everything I'm seeing is like my brain, which is good. So again, h6, the other choices we saw, so h4, knight a5, there was also rook c7, g5, rook a to c8, because on h takes g5, rook a to c8, rook h1, enters the c file, the h file, which is more important than the c file. Crazy, I would be terrified of like knight b4 and whatever, mainly whatever, but okay. So rook a to c8, king to d2, simply if knight takes, you just lose a piece because the rook's defended. Now h5 is a real success for white since black's kingside pawns are permanently stuck on light square. If you play h takes, it's kind of the same. Knight b4, here we go. On knight a5, knight e5, here we go, leads to the same kind of position that occurred in the game. And after knight b4, rook takes c7 check, rook takes c7, rook takes b4, bishop takes f3, e4. Look at that. With a position that's still rather uncomfortable for black. Okay, but let's look at the game now. Let's look at the game. I'm going to go from the beginning because we saw many variations. When I say the beginning, I mean g4. g4, h6, h4, knight a5, and here g5. So he went for it. H takes, rook takes c1, rook takes c1, rook c8, rook takes c8, bishop takes c8, and now knight e5. Look at that. And here e5 is a permanent outpost, you can say, because f6 is playable, but you can play g takes f6 and you're good. Black was hoping that the exchange of all the rooks would ease his defensive chore, but the superiority of the white knight and bishop over their black counterparts, plus the fact that black's pawns have been stuck on light squares, is a guarantee that black still has a lot of suffering to go through. Bishop b7, a3, putting the pawn on a dark square so the light square bishop cannot target it. Knight to c6 back, and now knight to g4. Since black's position is quite passive, white retains the knights, only to offer the trade at the best possible moment, and proceeds to improve the position of his king and gobble up as much central space with his pawns as possible. There is no hurry, and as I've said before, when you have an opponent passively waiting for his fate, take your time and improve your position as much as possible before undertaking any committal action. This isn't to say that black is lost here, but his position is far from easy to defend. So you notice here we're talking about Aronian and Svidler, right? Two super strong players. And if you look at this position, you may say there's no way white can make progress and stuff, but just improve your position and chances will happen. Just improve it. Knight b8, king d2, bishop c6, king c3, knight d7, f4, f4, a5, e4, taking a lot of space, b5, bishop to c2, perhaps freeing the d3 square for the king, I don't know though. And here f5, look at that. Black cracks, but black's Vidler. He should have played f6. f6, interesting. So after f5, e takes. Yeah, because if you take en passant, it transposes to to f6, so I guess it was good for black. So now you take en passant, and what happened? If you take with the g pawn, you create a strong pass pawn for white, I guess. So e takes, but now knight e5, only now, because after knight takes, pawn takes, look at that. White has a pass pawn. Suddenly black's position is hopeless, his kingside pawns are still on light squares, but now white has a protected pass pawn and an easy route into black's position via king c3, from c3 to d4 to c5. Okay, b4 check, that's crazy. Material would have been lost anyway after the king made it to c5, interesting. A takes, king takes, bishop back, bishop b3, bishop c6, king c5, bishop e8. This makes it easy for white. Black had to try bishop to f3 when a theoretical and complex position is reached that is supposed to be winning. Of course, this kind of thing is far outside the scope of this book. Suffice it to say that white mixes threats against g6, which is this guy here, bishop to g8, bishop h7, with a well-timed e5, e6 advance and decisive king breakthroughs to gain the full point. Note that all of this is possible because black's pawns are on light squares and thus vulnerable to the enemy bishop. That's crazy. This is also conjuncting with... This is really a crazy big arm, holy shit. But this is also conjuncting with endgames. This is crazy. This is one of the most educational, game analysis I've ever seen. That's crazy. I should spend more times reading very educational game analysis and examples by masters and grandmasters and stuff. That's so good. So bishop e8, Silman is providing such a good exercise, in my opinion at least. Bishop e8, now e6 was played. And the end might have been e6, because he resigned here. King here, bishop here, e7, king here, bishop here, threatening? I don't know. Bishop a4, bishop c4, wasting those little tempi, so the bishop has to leave the diagonal, unless he doesn't have, but bishop f7 here perhaps. Yeah, and that's all she wrote. Silman as usual, wild. And that's all she wrote. Nice. The only thing I wonder, I know you guys can't read too well, but after e6, why does he move the king? I don't understand why he moves the king. Oh, because he cannot move the bishop. There's no legal square for the bishop. Oh, that's crazy. Oh, that's why he should have played bishop f3. Because on bishop f3 he has moves for the bishop. Wow. Okay, that was great. This chapter is done. Guys, we did chapter 2, but I missed something. I missed the line. This. What? Okay, this is a highly exaggerated situation, but it clearly shows the bishop stamping the whole b1h7 diagonal with the brand of its authority. Nothing may safely step there, while in the meantime white's lone pawn after d6 will waltz into d8. And make a new queen. Okay, d6 and it's GG. Okay, the chapter is finished now because I missed that line. That was interesting. And this was part 2, bishops, speed demons of the diagonal. So we did part 1 when we saw what imbalances are and which are the imbalances, and we talked about them. Then we talked about knights, psychopaths of the chessboard, and then we talked about bishops, speed demons of the diagonals, right? So we talked about knights, bishops, and now we're going to look at bishops versus knights. So we're going to go into real depth of what it means, this bishop versus knights, right? So let's see in depth. So, bishops versus knights, grudge match. Let's see this chapter here. I'm very excited. This is really new stuff. And we are getting more and more advanced, as you can see. But this is great. The ceilings are there to be broken. Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, in this corner, we have a knight. It leaps, it prances, nothing is safe from it. And you never know what the thing will do next. In the other corner, we have a bishop. It enjoys super speed and can go from one edge of the board to the other in a single bound. Are you ready for the brutal battles that occur when one faces the other? Are you ready to rumble? Okay, I'll stop it. Are you ready for the carnage? But Silman keeps going. Are you ready for the carnage they leave in their wake? And the wailing cries of defeat the losing side makes when his bishop or knight fails in this all-minor piece face-off? Okay then, in that case, let's get ready to rumble. He said it! I didn't read it. He said it. That's crazy. I didn't read it. What the... Bro! That's crazy. He really said it. That's crazy. What? Bro, what? I didn't read it. That's crazy. I'm shocked. Let's go. That's crazy. That's actually crazy. Okay, by now you have learned the ins and outs of both minor pieces. In fact, many of you probably have already picked a favorite. I must say that I used to like bishops, right? I used to like bishops, but the last 2 chapters made me appreciate the knights more. Not more compared to the bishop, but more compared to how I appreciate the knights beforehand, which was not much. And so now I appreciate both minor pieces quite a bit. And I realized that they are very complex. So my favorite is still the rook. So let's keep going. Tigran Petrosian plays knights on a pedestal. Your author also has a deep love of knights, and most amateur fears knights far more than bishops. Knights are quite simply trickier. On the other hand, Fischer was perhaps the greatest aficionado of bishops ever seen. Well, then it means that the bishops are objectively best if Fischer says it. I'm honest, I'm not being ironic. Fischer's the GOAT. Unironically, call me crazy, it's fine. And the vast majority of grandmasters prefer bishops to knights. They're all copycats of Fischer. No, just kidding. Okay, they know what they're talking about, probably. Who knows? Nevertheless, whatever one's bias might be, you have to, and biases are dangerous, you have to know how to get the most out of both pieces, facts, and how to pit one against another. Fischer clearly preferred bishops to knights, but that didn't stop him from winning a knight versus bishop battle if he felt the position favors the horse. Most importantly, he didn't have a problem trading his own bishop for their knight if he thought it was correct, right? The same can be said for knight worshippers. If these folk find themselves in a wide open position, chances are the bishop will be the minor piece of preference. Ultimately, the real value of the minor pieces depends on the combined imbalances on the board. Silman speaking those facts. The position is closed, knights are often for choice. Are you staring at an endgame with mutual running past pawns? The bishop usually wipes the floor with the knight. And which minor piece would you choose in a position where it's all important to be able to access both color squares? A bishop can't do that, so a knight is the way to go. These things are super important, guys. Again, it's all about the basics, and a lot of people perhaps don't study a lot of chess. But if you start to study some chess, which I'm starting to do, I've been starting to do it since the last year. I did like perhaps just one month interruption, 2 month interruption because of work, but other than that, I try to study quite a bit. You start to realize these are just basics. It's just that people don't study chess. Like how to reassess your chess, you should learn the rules of chess. Okay, you stop hanging pieces every second, and then you should read this. But I'm 10 years into chess, like what I've been doing. That's crazy. But okay, those are the basics, right? We are starting to learn the basics. Once you learn these basics, it's all about when you play, stop, try to recollect what you learned and apply it in that specific position. And in the beginning you're going to fail. You're going to think that this is an important imbalance in this position, and it's not. Or perhaps you don't even recognize some imbalances, right? So you are confused, you make mistakes, but then you become better and better and better and better because you do it, you make mistakes, you analyze, you evaluate, you correct, right? And you keep doing it, and eventually you achieve mastery of the imbalances. And in my opinion, once you do that, you are a master. I think that it's that simple. Whether you are on paper, meaning you have 2300 FIDE rating, right? That's another matter, but you're definitely master strength. This is my opinion. Because the imbalances is the whole middle game, but even in endgames and stuff, right? So there are other little things, like you have to calculate some moves, but you know what I mean. So the battle of the minor pieces, each possessing different powers. No, okay, before going, the reason I made this little speech, this little rant, is because, like, you may think there's more to this, right? There's like some more secret complexities, but I really don't think so. I don't know. I'm not like a world champion, obviously, but I don't think there's much more than that, really. It's just about mastering what you have at your disposal. You know, it's like the Bruce Lee quote of mastering one shot rather than trying to do 1,000 shots one time. You rather do one shot 1,000 times. But you know what I mean. It's not the quote, but you know what I mean. This battle of the minor pieces, each possessing different powers, is my favorite in all of chess. And there are 4 minor pieces, and in the opening and middle game, and even endgame sometimes, like, they are the most important pieces because they are 4 all around the place. So if you're good at those 4 pieces, you're good at the game probably, right? If I possess a knight, I try to imprint knight characteristics on the board so that the rapidly approaching battle with the enemy bishop will favor me. If I have a bishop, I do everything possible to make the position bishop friendly. The ability to create a promising position for your minor piece or pieces will set you apart from the other players. In fact, after losing to your superior knight or bishop, your depressed and clueless opponent will often tell you that it was just bad luck, that things didn't work out for him. Yeah, and there is somebody that said that Fischer always had the right pieces on the board. He was always left with the right minor piece on the board, and the opponent was left with the wrong one. There are a lot of masters and grandmasters quote that sentence there, that someone said sometimes. The following things are critical in all bishop versus knight battles. Be aware that there is going to be a bishop versus knight battle. Be aware of all the imbalances and how they relate to the minor piece or pieces and your opponent own. You and your opponent own. Create a board situation that your minor pieces crave. Okay, so this is very important things. Very complex, very difficult. Again, if you guys are a little bit confused, you have to understand I am as well. But I trust process. And process is repeating these things, applying them, self-correcting the mistakes, applying them again, and all these things, right? So now I'm a little bit confused, but it's fine. If I wasn't confused about any of these, I would be a grandmaster, but I'm not, of course. Or a master, let's say. Grandmaster is perhaps a little bit exaggerated. So feeling the minor piece tension. Our first example shows how an apparently simple position can actually be filled with minor piece tension. Okay, so let's chill for a second. Let's look at this position. Let's try to do evaluation. Let's not even try to look for moves, perhaps, or perhaps even yes. I don't know. Let's look. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So material is equal. However, we have some imbalances. Well, we have to first look at the pawn structure because, again, I want to have a structured way of thinking. So pawn structure, there is symmetrical, non-symmetrical, weaknesses, space, pawn breaks. Okay. Space perhaps comes after, I don't know. Symmetrical, not symmetrical. So we have symmetrical pawn structure, 8 pawns. Weaknesses. Sorry, majority, minorities, no. Weaknesses. I wouldn't say there are big weaknesses, perhaps the b7 and b2 pawns, perhaps. And if they move, some squares get weak, but I wouldn't say there are big weaknesses at the moment. Space, we have more space in the center. They have 1 pawn on e5 that is looking at some squares, but we have 3 pawns there. They have just 1. So we have more space in the center, and even on the queen side, so the center and the queen side, but also on the king side on f5. So we have more space from b5 to f5. So we have more space in the center, let's say. Okay, pawn breaks. c5 is a pawn break. Something I'm noticing for some reasons. I'm just noticing there. He's just there staring at me. I don't know. I really don't know. Okay. Minor pieces, finally. Major imbalances, bishop pair, knight versus bishop, opposite color bishop. Ladies and gentlemen, there is this major minor piece imbalancing. We have the bishop pair. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the bishop pair. And again, we are talking about the minor pieces. We are all getting excited. But remember, in a real game, you have already read the full book and you don't know what to look for. So in a real game, you will notice there is the bishop pair, but you wouldn't throw a party. Now we throw a party because that's minor pieces, that's probably crucial to the position, but you don't know in a real game. In a real game, everything is the same. You have to be objective as much as you can. Okay, so we have a stronger center, bishop pair. Okay. But now let's do, even if there are major imbalances, you just want to notice them, right? And in general, what you want to do with a bishop pair, you want to open up the position. So let's see. Let's do now relative imbalance, like dark square bishops. The dark square bishop on f6 looks quite decent, quite frankly. He's looking at e5, but there is tension. And again, playing d5, closing down the position, which could be an idea. Again, let's not be biased, but tends to favor knights. So perhaps we don't want to play d5. And it's very interesting, this position, because if you play d5, it favors the knight, but it kills their f6 bishop, right? But their dark square bishop wouldn't be killed. So as right now, their bishop is kind of there, existing. Our dark square bishop also is kind of there existing, but it's pointing at h6. They're not pointing at h3. So perhaps queen d2 can be interesting, as an idea to attack h6. But okay. Our light square bishop is, our light square bishop, poor thing. We should try to activate it a little bit more. Yeah, our light square, our light square bishop, Nah, man, nah. Our light square bishop is just there, bro. No, not good. So our light square bishop on f3 would like the position to explode. Like in a billion pieces. Give me all that. Okay, I'm getting a little bit crazy, sorry. So there's that. Heavy pieces. I will say that our heavy pieces are a little bit better by virtue of the fact that they still have a knight on b8. Oh, we haven't talked about the knight on b8. The knight on b8 is terrible on b8. It has to absolutely be developed. Absolutely. No question asked. You gotta develop that guy. 100%. The most natural square is perhaps c6. So perhaps d5 again, this idea, but then knight a6, not clear. b4, knight takes b4 is not good, I think. So it's complicated, but the knight in this specific moment is not good. The queens are equal, I will say. Yeah, I will say. Perhaps the queen on d1 is a little bit better, but again, having more space makes everything a little bit better. But the two white rooks are a little bit better because they're already connected. It takes just one move to connect it directly, and they take two moves, like I'm saying. Armageddon thinking, checks, threats, captures. There are no threats for neither players, it seems to me. I'm not talking about positional threats, I'm talking about purely tactical threats. There are no checks, there are no captures. I mean, there are captures in the center, like e takes d4, bishop takes d4, bishop takes d4, queen takes d4, knight c6. I'm looking at all the most forcing lines, queen c3, and we're good, like materially speaking. So yeah, no, there are no crazy threats that I can see at the time being. That is. So okay, so if nothing urgent, select kind of moves based on evaluation, and if there's something urgent, calculate. Okay, so my evaluation is we have more space in the center, and we have the bishop pair. So we want to open the position and exploit their underdevelopment. I noticed b7, which is slightly weak, so queen b3 is a candidate move. D takes e5 is a candidate move to open up the position. c5 is a candidate move. But also trying to bring but queen b3, okay, on queen b3 start to become complicated. E takes d4, queen takes b7, d takes e3, queen takes b8. It's probably good for us, but their bishop becomes really open, like bishop takes b2, rook a to b1, bishop d4 even, f takes c3, bishop takes king h1. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but like bishop b6, I don't know, man. I don't know. So queen b3 is a move, but also like b6, queen c8 is like, it's not the end of the world. D takes e5. There even is d takes e5. And if we trade, they're happy. They're going to play knight c6, knight d4, and they're going to get there forever. So I don't like that. No, I don't like that at all. D takes c5, d takes c5, keeping our bishop shut and preparing knight c6, knight d4, and after bishop takes, pawn takes, their pawn is there forever. So d takes c5, absolutely excluded, and it may be the solution, right? So this is not a puzzle, by the way, but I'm treating it as such because I think that's more educational. So d takes c5, right? I don't like it much. But what I like is c5. And originally I excluded c5 because after e takes d4, bishop takes d4, bishop takes d4, queen takes d4, d takes c5, queen takes c5, I thought this is not good. However, I realized that I'm left with a bishop against a knight, and the position's pretty open. I can play e5 this time. If knight d7, there is queen b5 there, right? Knight e5 is not playable because I just take it and b7 is hanging. And then I'm going to play e5 myself. And I'm going to open up the guy. So I'm not disliking this idea too much of playing c5, quite frankly. I'm not disliking it much. The other idea is d5 to try to play against black's development. On knight d7 and b4, perhaps you can make some arguments because you're going to play c5 anyways. But the problem is b5, knight a6. You cannot play b4 because the knight guards that, and you're going to play like, I don't even know. You can even play, you know what, after d4 you can play a5 with the idea knight d7, knight c5. I don't know. And also this bishop is dead. Other ideas, I really don't know. Queen d2... But again, e takes d4, bishop takes d4, bishop takes, queen takes, knight c6, and they're going to get to e5. I don't like that. Instead, c5, again, if they play... Oh, they can play pawn takes, bishop takes, queen takes, knight c6. Okay. So I don't like that either. either. I don't know how to say it, so I don't like it. So their idea is to play knight c6. Okay, so what's black's idea to play their knight c6 thing? So we may actually want to play d5 here. That's crazy. Okay, now let's see. Our first example shows how an apparently simple position can actually be filled with minor piece tension. White to move. Please treat the variations in this example as a sort of theatrical drama. It might not be based on reality, but it has a profound effect on the viewer. I'm hoping this game will pass on a sense of urgency, a visual slap in the face that makes you exclaim, wow, I didn't realize that a boring minor piece battle was so important and that it could go back and forth so easily. On the surface, things look easy. White has 2 bishops and would like to open things up, while black has a bishop and knight and would be happy if he could activate his bishop and find a nice home for his horse. The main question here are, should white take on e5, push d5, or simply ignore the face-off between the d4 and e5 pawns altogether? That's exactly the question, so I'm happy that I thought in the right direction at the very least. All these decisions are dependent on how they ultimately affect the state of the minor pieces, but achieving the optimum goals proves far harder than one might suppose. Let's take a look at these 3 different options. Yeah, because again, c5 or d takes c5, it looks to me that it just allows white to activate. It's just very interesting, isn't it? Perhaps takes queen b3. Or maybe takes queen b3. Let's just look at it. So closing the center, passing, let's open it up. Okay, closing the center. d5. This gains space, kills off the black's bishop hopes for an open a1 h8 diagonal, and deprives the knight of c6. Everything I noticed. These things certainly sound great, but it all falls flat after black's thematic reply bishop g5, a move that I didn't consider. I mean, I saw bishop g5 as an idea, but not here, okay? White suddenly has nothing. Black's move forces the exchange of dark square bishops. This deprives white of his bishop pair, and after bishop takes queen takes, creates a new minor piece battle of knight versus inactive bishop. Black wins the minor piece battle. Rule: if your opponent has 2 bishops, exchange one off and create a more manageable bishop versus bishop or bishop versus knight scenario. This is huge. He's choosing examples that are so educational, it's crazy. Passing. Today, for some reason, I have some energy. I don't know how it's possible. So queen d2, this simply passes. E takes, bishop takes, queen takes, knight c6. Here we go. Queen c3, rook e8, rook f2 e1, knight e5. Here we go. Bishop e2, queen to g5. And black has no problems. His knight is a good piece. White's bishop isn't very impressive. White's central majority isn't going anywhere. And black enjoys some pressure against e4. g3. Notice that c5, d takes c5, queen takes c5 fails to knight f3, winning the queen. Okay, so g3 was tried. Not sure why though. Knight d7 uncovers the rook so that e4 is attacked, opens up the e5 square for black's queen, and also creates the possibility of knight c5. Bishop to f3, defends the pawn. Queen to e5, queen takes e5, knight takes e5, attacks the bishop, bishop back to e2, knight c6 back, bishop g4, frightening bishop d7 perhaps, knight d4. There was no hurry for this since rook e7 followed by rook a to e8 was also quite good. However, knight d4 shows black clearly winning the minor piece battle, so it's important to highlight. Rook a to d1, c5, look at that, beautiful, beautiful. And the knight has found a permanent home on d4. Black's minor piece is a happy camper. So this leaves us with let's open it up, which I had problems with. Now, d takes e5, the critical try. However, it's not a trivial decision because white has to worry about d takes e5, giving his opponent a lock on the d4 square after knight c6. Though this sounds impressive for black, it turns out to be problematic since white gains a bothersome initiative. D takes, queen b3. So now you go for that. So you don't have time for knight c6. Queen c8 walks into bishop g4. Wow. When white bishop have won the day. Wow. I'm gonna show it because you may struggle to visualize. Here it is. b6. Rook a to d1 attacks the queen. Queen e7. Knight d7, bishop g4 again looks good. Bishop g4 anyways. Bishop to g5. Not the only move by any means, but it's certainly the most thematic. Trading the horrible bishop for white's good one makes perfect sense. Naturally, black will jump at knight c6, d4, except that knight c6 allows rook d7. So I was wondering, like, why not knight c6, rook d7? Terrible. So bishop g5, now c5. This not only gives the white queen active possibilities on the a to g8 diagonal, but it also allows the light square bishop to be active even if it's driven back. Bishop g4 to e2 to c4, it's suddenly on. Bishop takes e3. F takes e3. This is like, look at all these pieces, this is crazy. White's quite happy with this. His f1 rook is suddenly king of the f file, and black's dreamed of knight domination via knight b8 to c6 to d4 is no longer on the table. This is concrete, but this is strategical. Wait, it's just simple? Nah. King h8, king h8. If you play queen takes c5, rook takes f7 is so strong, is too strong. Rook takes, rook check, queen f8, boom, boom, attacking the other rook. Knight c6 is the only move. Oh, is the only move? Wow, this wins. King h8, brutal. So king h8, queen to c4, and now g6. What about taking? Takes, I don't know. A rook d5 perhaps, I don't know. g6, hoping to chase the bishop away with h5, queen to c3. Not losing sight of the bishop versus knight battle. White takes aim at e5 while also preparing bishop g4 to e2 to whatever. When the bishop can find an active role along the f1, a6 diagonal, most notably leaping to c4 or b5 in many variations. Now bishop c8 was also an interesting move, which is just crazy. It's hard to resist if you see it, lines like this, rook f2 d1, on queen takes c5, queen e6 mates. That's crazy, queen f6 is over. So queen e8, but now the rook goes here. White give white a fearsome attack. Black can put up a much better defense, but I think the variations after 8, bishop c8 are still fun for white. This is an enjoyable line to analyze, but has no place in this book since it takes us far afield from our bishop versus knight theme. I should add that white has many good moves here. For example, c6. Wow. Also looks tasty and highlights the sad state of black's knight. Okay. So, queen to c3. If rook f to f6, here we go. On queen takes, yeah, rook d5, and there's huge advantage. So f6 was tried, now rook d5, h5, bishop e2, and it's clear that the bishop is superior to the knight. White finally won a minor piece battle. So does this mean that d takes e5 is just better for white? Not necessarily. Black lost that battle because he didn't do enough to make his knight challenge the white bishop. So let's step back to the initial diagram and show more principled course for black. A more principled course for black. I skipped the line though. Why do I skip lines? Feeling the minor piece tension. What is this? I didn't... I just went straight to the next diagram. Sorry, I just have to make sure that I check them, you know. A more principled course for black. I have to put on, some clothing because it's getting cold here. I also need to eat some food because I'm getting super hungry. So let's look the more principal course for black, then I'm gonna make myself some food. So d takes e5, d takes e5, queen b3, knight c6, sacrificing the pawn. This is more like it. Black insists. This is like in cursive, meaning it's an important word. And there's going to be a whole chapter about insisting, so on making his knight an active participant in the game. So queen takes b7, knight d4. This is how a knight should be used. Okay, bishop g4. On bishop takes d4, e takes d4, e5. Rook to d8 is okay for black. Bishop g4, a5. Sorry, what is this line? So e5. Oh, e5 we're threatening the rook. So if they take the pawn, we take the rook, and we're left an exchange up. Okay, so they have to play rook b8, but this is okay. So bishop g4, a5, queen d5, queen e7, c5, rook a to b8 gives black's good compensation for the sacrifice pawn. Black's knight is struggling. Black's knight is struggling its stuff. Okay? Stuff may be like a technical term for equipment of the knight, but I don't speak English good enough, so I don't know. Final minor piece battle. I should add that after d takes e5, black isn't forced to take back with his pawn. Here is a final minor piece battle from the initial position. D takes, bishop takes, c5. White opens things up as much as possible. Instead, bishop g4, knight c6. I guess taking on b2 just allows rook b1 that wins b7, knight c6, f4, bishop takes b2. You can also play bishop to f6, queen d2, rook e8, bishop f3. Gives white an edge thanks to his center and 2 knights bishop, but there's bishop takes b2, rook b1, bishop f6. Is okay for black after rook takes knight here, rook back to defend the pawn, c5, rook a4, queen c7, bishop f3, to threaten perhaps e5, knight c6, and this is okay for black. Okay, let's keep going. c5, knight c6, here we go. C takes, queen takes, bishop takes, rook f to d1, rook f to d8, bishop to e2, preventing knight to e5. Well, not preventing, but like prophylaxis against knight e5, let's say. Bishop e5, rook a to b1 defense, bishop d4, g5, which fights for the dark squares and prevent f2, f4, is far more combative. So I guess this was a game. Bishop d4, bishop f4, bishop d4, bishop f4, bishop e5, bishop takes, knight takes, f4. And here white's central majority and active bishop grants him the more pleasant position, though black's knight is still hoping to make an impact with knight c6, knight d4 at some point. With c5 perhaps and b6, that wouldn't be bad. We have seen these minor piece battles swing back and forth in these lines. Clearly the bishop versus knight face-off is important and calls for energetic and pointed play if you wish to see your minor piece regain supreme. So that was interesting. But that's it. I think that's it. I think that's the end of it. Yeah, that was the end of it. It was just a lot of back and forth. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself some dinner. So I'm going to leave you for like 3 minutes perhaps or so, and I'm going to be back. See you in a second. You guys can read this while I'm gone. Okay, guys, I'm back. So while I wait for my dinner to be made, I'm gonna eat something here that I have a snack. Okay, so let's keep going. Now, let's settle down a bit and take a look at some basic situations. First on our agenda is the extremely common two bishops versus bishop and knight battle. I consider this to be an extension of a bishop versus knight situation, though an exchange of knight for bishop would turn that into a poor bishop versus bishop fight. Okay, so it's a little bit more nuanced. Okay, I couldn't read because I'm eating, but you guys can read it for yourself, of course. The two bishops antidote. Trade one off. Vasily Ivanchuk against Shirov, 2008. That's crazy. I mean, it feels to me that white is getting crushed, but I'm gonna get a lesson probably. My monitor just went black to save energy. Bro, I'm using it. Unbelievable. Also save energy, can you imagine? Bro. Moving on. Okay, bishop e5. Bishop f3, bishop e2, bishop c6, bishop e5. And the game was a draw. Interesting. Interesting. De la Riva Ponomariov exercise. So let's not look at the moves. Let's just click on learn. Okay. Because Chessable didn't put it as an exercise. So it's like, there are the moves. There is a little mosquito. Killed it. Okay. You know, I'm thinking they have the bishop pair, slicing the diagonals. Bishop h6 to trade it, right? Bishop takes, knight takes, and we're okay. So let's see. Here we go. Now let's look at it. White has two bishops, but black has a central majority of pawns. How should black play? Bishop h6. There goes white pair of bishops. Bishop takes, knight takes. With its dark square border of the board, the light square bishop will prove to be remarkably inefficient. From this point on, white can't hope for more than a draw. The knight will show itself to be far more flexible than the bishop, and black's central pawn majority will prove hard to contain. Let's look at another example. Okay. Okay, so far this is the explanation we just had, in the same position as before. He just showed us the whole game now. I'm taking a sip of water. Now, I'm gonna check my food. So I'm gonna leave you for like 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, I'm back, but I have to take something to cover myself because I'm feeling the cold sneaking up on me. And when I study chess, at some point it's like I wake up and I'm super cold, and then it's too late, you know? So let's avoid that. Okay. So let's take this thing that is gonna keep me warm, hopefully. It should work extremely well. This thing is like, it keeps you really warm. You know, it really keeps you warm. I would like to avoid for it to touch the ground. You know, it's winter almost, but let's say it's winter and you're studying chess and it's a little bit cold, you're cold, you know. Sorry. Moving on. Knight takes h6. Okay, bishop h3. So here, okay, so now, because, and this I'm saying it for myself, I just realized why this keeps going. Well, now it's knight against bishop, right? Bishop h3. Bro, I'm so excited. Remember why we're doing all this. Remember the first video of this series. You're gonna are you ready to become a chess master? And here we are, on the road. Let's go! I'm getting warmer now. So king g7, black is in no hurry, so he uses his king to tighten up the loose dark squares on f6 and h6. So he's in no hurry, okay. Queen to e2, queen c7, preventing queen e5 check. Rook takes d8, rook takes d8, rook d1, rook takes d1. Because here the threat is rook takes d8, queen takes d8, queen e5. There is queen f6, but then there is queen c7, but then there is queen takes c3, but then there is queen takes a7. It's not clear. It's not clear at all. Then there is queen e1, then there is bishop f1, then there is knight g4. Then there is queen takes b6. But then queen takes f2, queen h2 is mate. But the fact that I calculated that much is crazy. It's all wrong probably, but you know, definitely. So rook takes d1, queen takes d1, f5, because again, you mobilize the center, right? The rest of the game will be given with minimal comment. In a nutshell, black slowly but surely repositions his knight, advances his central and kingside pawns, improves the position of his king, and then shows just how useful the knight is at both attack and defense. Queen d2, knight g8, bishop g2, knight f6. So these two last moves from black. Okay, improves the knight. e5, e4. You know, these grandmasters playing those weird moves is just crazy. So, again, trying to reposition the knight to e6, because for some reason he thought it was better. Black, who is dreaming of having his pawns act like a tidal wave rushing through white's position. Tidal wave is like the hardest geometry dash level as the time of this recording here. What does that mean, tidal wave? It's like one of those crazy waves that just destroy things? So black, who is dreaming of having his pawns act like a tidal wave rushing through white's position, wants to play h6 followed by g5 and eventually f5, f4. The knight on e6 will defend both the g5 and f4 square, okay? Bishop f1. I was thinking about it a little bit. h6, king c1, g5, h takes, h takes. King c2, king f6, king c1, f4. Doesn't this hang a pawn? G takes f4, queen takes f4, but what about queen takes e4? Then perhaps f takes e3, f takes e3, queen takes e3? I don't know. King d2, knight g7, with the idea knight f5 forcing the trade of queens. Wow. The knight achieved its goal on e6 and now heads to f5, where it will be break the block on e3. Bishop g2. I wonder what happened if you move the king and you force the trade. Maybe you don't force the trade. I don't know. Maybe knight e6. Anyways, bishop h3, knight f5, takes. Is easy for black. Okay, winning endgame. Endgames, as you can see. King e5, bishop takes. Whoa. Queen takes, so he sacrifices a piece, but it's not enough, I guess. After showing its attacking powers, the knight now demonstrates how he can defend his king. Queen d8, queen b7, king e2, king f4, 1-0. And notice how this knight defends all the checking squares. Well, he doesn't defend these, but I guess he just moves the king then. So, interesting. That was very insightful, very nice. Free-range bishops are happier bishops. And then bishop versus knight. Bishop versus knight, the basics, that's crazy. Pawns and squares determine a minor piece value. Fischer versus Reshevsky, wow. All pawns on one side of the board and octopus guard. Bro, this guy's teaching me chess. I never... And then there are the tests. I never knew chess, bro. All these games, all these puzzles, this is heaven. Bro, I never studied chess, I never knew chess. What? But this is so great, bro, because it means that I can improve tremendously. Like, I made it to 1972 FIDE. Without knowing anything of this. And of course some things I follow, not knowing that they are theorized here, but... The sky's the limit, guys. The sky's the limit. So let's look at this game between Samuel Reshevsky and Karel Benjamin. Karel Benjamin Vandenberg. I thought that was the continuation of the title. Okay, free-range bishops. I'm just taking a little bit of time because, come on, I've been studying for 2 hours now. Allow me to have a little bit of what's going on, where am I? Also, these things works. You know, I'm getting warmer, but it's not, you know, it's not crazy warm. It's not crazy warm. You know, there's a big attack in this moment going on my inner temperature. And it's barely making it to normal. But I feel really good. This is a really good temperature. It's like I'm almost cold, but not. But I'm not warm, because warm I don't like. I am like, I have perfect temperature / slightly, very, very slightly cold. Okay, let's keep going. d4. Okay, naturally, in many cases, the bishops aren't contained by the pawn structure and can't be removed by any exchange. In that case, they can really show their stuff. So here we are talking, and we are seeing, we're talking about, and we are seeing a bishop pair that just crashes. So I think d4, knight f6. This is for what I understand. c4, e6, knight c3, bishop b4, e3, castle, knight e2, a3. Sorry, d5, a3, bishop takes, knight takes, b6, b4, c5. Black's last move wasn't too bright. White has the 2 bishops and black went out of his way to blast open the center. True. White's king is still in the middle, and at times opening things up to punish the enemy king's position takes precedent over any gains you give to the bishop pair. However, in this case black doesn't get anything going at all, and he'll experience nothing but misery once those diagonals fall into the bishop's hands. This is written by Silman. Now Maurice Ashley, the grandmaster that is presenting the course for Chessable, adds a variation. Rather than c5, bishop a6 is the best move, aiming at the bishop trade. b5, bishop b7, white has weakened some squares. D takes c4 is now a threat, because you can't take back because g2 falls. So c takes, knight takes, queen takes. Black has gained some activity and a massive lead in development to make up for the bishop pair. f3, trying to develop the bishop finally by blocking the diagonal, otherwise g2 will fall with tremendous attack. c5, blasting open the position, but this time with the massive lead in development and the new created weaknesses. Bishop to b2, queen g5, attacking a3, queen d2, trying to defend everything, rook d8, look at that, bishop d3, knight d7, and white is in some trouble as castling is refuted by black's activity. For example, castle, c takes, on e takes you lose the queen, so bishop takes, but now e5 all of a sudden, bishop back to c3, and now knight to c5, and black is winning. So dangerous things. I may be allergic to this cover. It should be made on purpose that you're not supposed to be allergic to this, but... So d takes, b takes. So this is the game, right? So Hernandez de la Vela or Karel Benjamin van den Berg. Guys, I'm not trying to make fun of anybody, okay? I'm just trying to alleviate the pressure of studying chess for 2 hours straight. Okay, sorry, but that's it is. c5, d takes, b takes, c takes, c takes, a takes, e takes, bishop to e2. White can't be foolish and leave his king in the middle too long. He owns the long-term pluses of 2 bishops and a superior pawn structure, because black has 2 weaknesses, the a7 and the d5 pawn, whereas white only has 1 weakness, which is the b4 pawn. So once his king is safe, everything should go his way. Knight c6. Maurice Ashley. d4 looks the most interesting. Black needs activity and to exploit the development lead as fast as possible. E takes, knight c6 attacking both pawns and gives black good play. Bishop to f3. Now if the knight moves you lose the rook. Queen takes d4 because there are tactics, and here castle. Leads to this 4 sequence. Now you're probably thinking, what about taking? Well, if you take, there is takes, black's point is the fork on c2. Takes, yes, but now check and take. And the knight will get out via b3. You may be thinking, what about king c2? It's illegal. Okay, once we have established that, let's go back. Castle. Leads to this 4 sequence, queen takes c3, bishop to d2, queen to b2, bishop takes c6, bishop to b7. Excuse me? Excuse me, what? Oh, so he sacrifices a piece, takes another one. Oh, rook a to d8 will win back the other piece. Queen a4 takes, rook f to b1. White keeps some edge, but black is active. White's best way to meet d4 is knight b5. Knight c6, taking on e3 opens the game for white's bishops. And knight takes d4, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, queen takes d4, e takes d4, rook e8. f3 with the idea king f2, I guess. Bishop f5, or just restricting the knight, I guess. Okay, king to d2, and white has everything under control. Bishop b2 will protect the d4 pawn and connect the rooks, who can double up on the a5 with rook a5. But okay, back to the game with knight c6 when d4 was the most interesting, but still better for white. I'm gonna go take my food and be back. So give me a second. Actually, you know what? I realize it's very late, so I'm gonna close the video here because then I have to go to the chess club, if I manage to go. Thank you guys so much for watching this. This was a super great studying session because I wasn't falling asleep at every second. Look at that. So thank you so much for watching, and let's become masters together, guys, if you want. Otherwise you can just watch, enjoy, and improve at your own level. It's fine. Enjoy your chess.